My name is Nick Carter, and I'm about to tell you how I discovered my wife was screwing another man in our garage while I was upstairs watching Netflix like an idiot. It started on a Tuesday night in October. Lena had been working late again, or so she claimed. I was sitting in our split-level house in Millbrook, Massachusetts, nursing a beer and wondering why the garage smelled like expensive cologne when my wife drove a Honda and worked with people who shopped at Target. The credit card statement arrived that morning. Buried between our usual charges for groceries and gas was a line item that made me pause. Riverside Motel, $89.99. I'd never been to the Riverside Motel. Hell, I didn't even know we had one in town. When Lena walked through the door at 11:30, her hair was different. Not messy different, carefully tousled different. The kind of different that takes effort. "How was work?" I asked, not looking up from my laptop. "Exhausting. We're pitching the Henderson account tomorrow." She kicked off her heels and headed straight for the shower. No kiss, no small talk, no eye contact. I waited until I heard the water running, then checked her purse. Her phone was still there, buzzing with notifications. The lock screen showed 3 missed calls from Zach and a text preview that read, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow." The shower stopped. I put the phone back and pretended to work on structural calculations for a bridge project in Springfield. Lena emerged in her robe, hair wrapped in a towel. "I might have to work late again tomorrow. This Henderson thing is really important." "Sure," I said. "Whatever you need to do." She studied my face for a moment, like she was trying to read blueprints she didn't understand. Then she shrugged and went to bed. I stayed up until 3, staring at that credit card charge and thinking about cologne in the garage. The next morning, I called in sick to work, first time in 2 years. After Lena left for her important meeting, I went through our garage with the methodical precision I usually reserved for foundation inspections. Behind the recycling bins, I found it, a condom wrapper, still sticky with morning dew. Trojan, ultra thin. We'd been trying to have kids for 6 months. Lena had been off birth control for 8. My hands were shaking as I photographed the wrapper with my phone, not from anger, not yet. From the sick realization that I'd been living in a house built on rotten timbers, and I was the only one who didn't know it was about to collapse. That's when Trish Morrison appeared at our fence with her yappy terrier, Buster. "Morning, Nick. You're home early." Trish was our neighbor, a retired teacher with opinions about everything and the subtlety of a jackhammer. "Sick day," I managed. Buster started digging near our mailbox, his tail wagging frantically. "Buster, no. What have you found now?" The dog emerged with something silver in his mouth. Trish pried it away and held it up to the light. "Well, would you look at that? A cufflink. Real silver, too, by the looks of it." She squinted at the engraving. "ZM. Those your initials, Nick?" My throat felt like sandpaper. "No. Mine are NC. Huh. Wonder how it got in your yard." She handed it over with the casual indifference of someone who'd just lit a fuse. "Probably fell off some delivery guy." I stared at the cufflink. ZM Zach with the camera emoji. Zach who called my wife at 11:30 at night. Zach who apparently liked expensive accessories and cheap motels. "Yeah," I said. "Probably." Trish wandered off, Buster in tow, leaving me standing in my driveway holding evidence of my marriage's destruction. The October air bit through my shirt, but I barely felt it. I was too busy calculating load-bearing capacity and wondering how much weight a 30-year relationship could hold before the whole structure came crashing down. I walked back into the house and sat at my kitchen table, staring at the cufflink and the photo of the condom wrapper. My phone buzzed with a text from Lena. "Meeting running long. Don't wait up." For the first time in months, I laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because the alternative was putting my fist through the wall. I had work to do. Mick's Auto Shop sat on the wrong side of Millbrook like a middle finger pointed at the gentrified downtown. Mick Kowalski had been my best friend since high school, back when we both thought we'd end up working construction forever. He fixed cars, I designed buildings, different tools, same blue-collar DNA. Your wife's Honda needs maintenance, I told him Thursday morning, dropping the keys on his oil-stained counter. Mick looked up from a carburetor, grease streaking his forearms. Since when do you handle Lena's car stuff? Since I'm trying to be a more attentive husband, he snorted. Right. And I'm trying to be a more attentive mechanic. What's really going on? I'd known Mick too long to lie effectively. I think she's cheating. His hands stilled on the carburetor. Shit, Nick. You sure? I showed him the photos. The condom wrapper, the cufflink, the credit card charge. Mick studied them with the same focus he brought to engine diagnostics. ZM, he muttered. You know who that is? Working on it. Well, let's see what the car tells us. Cars don't lie, even when their owners do. 2 hours later, Mick called. You need to get down here. Now. I found him in his office, a cramped space that smelled like motor oil and instant coffee. A small SD card sat on his desk next to a laptop. Found this in her dashcam, he said. Lena probably forgot it was there. Most people don't even know these things record audio. My stomach dropped. What's on it? See for yourself. He hit play. The video was grainy, shot from the dashboard of Lena's Honda. The timestamp showed last Tuesday, the night she'd come home smelling like cologne. The camera faced the garage interior, showing 2 figures pressed against the workbench. Lena's voice was breathless, excited. God, Zach, if Nick finds out... A man's voice, deeper, confident. He won't. Guy's got his head buried in blueprints all day. Besides, what's he gonna do? He's not exactly the confrontational type. Still, we should be more careful. Relax, babe. After the Henderson presentation, we'll have enough to start our own agency. Then you can divorce the engineer, and we can do this in a real bed. The video quality was poor, but the audio was crystal clear. I watched my wife of 8 years plan my replacement with the clinical efficiency she usually reserved for advertising campaigns. Jesus, Mick whispered. I'm sorry, man. I ejected the SD card and pocketed it. Don't be. This is exactly what I needed. What are you going to do? I'm going to be more confrontational than they think. That evening, I drove to the Rusty Nail, Millbrook's dive bar and unofficial gossip headquarters. Bev Hartley had owned the place for 20 years, and in that time she'd developed an encyclopedic knowledge of everyone's business. Nick Carter, she said as I slid onto a bar stool. Don't see you here often. Lena working late again? The question hit like a slap. You know about that? Bev poured me a whiskey without asking. Honey, I know about everything. Your wife's been spotted around town with some silver-haired guy in a Tesla. Art gallery, that new wine bar on Main Street, couple other places. Silver-haired guy? Zach Morton. Runs some fancy marketing firm downtown. Real smooth talker, if you believe the hype. Zach Morton. ZM. The pieces clicked into place with mechanical precision. You know him? Know of him. He's got a reputation for mixing business with pleasure, if you catch my meaning. His wife divorced him 2 years ago. Took him for half his company. I sipped the whiskey, feeling it burn away the last of my illusions. What else do you know about him? Drives that Tesla like he's compensating for something. Parks it at the office complex on Elm Street every day, right in front of the building like he owns the place. Bev leaned closer. You thinking of having a conversation with him? Something like that. Well, if you do, make it count. Guys like Morton don't respond to polite requests. I finished my drink and left a 20 on the bar. Thanks, Bev. Anytime, hun, and Nick, whatever you're planning, just remember, the best revenge is living well. But sometimes a little public humiliation doesn't hurt either. I drove home to find Lena's car in the driveway and the lights on in the kitchen. She was sitting at the table with her laptop, still in her work clothes. How was your day? She asked without looking up. Productive. Yours? Good. The Henderson presentation went well. Zach thinks we have a real shot at landing them. The casual way she said his name made my jaw clench. That's great. You two make a good team. She glanced up, something flickering in her eyes. We do. He's very creative. I bet he is. We stared at each other across the table, two people who'd shared a bed for 8 years and somehow become strangers. The house felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were closing in. I'm going to bed, Lena said finally. I'll be up in a minute. But I didn't go to bed. I sat in my kitchen, staring at the SD card and planning my next move. Zach Morton thought I wasn't the confrontational type. Tomorrow, I'd prove him wrong. The Elm Street office complex was one of those glass and steel monuments to corporate mediocrity that sprouted up in the early 2000s. Morton Creative occupied the 3rd floor, according to the directory. His Tesla was parked exactly where Bev said it would be, front row, taking up 2 spaces. I waited in the parking garage at 5:15, knowing most office workers cleared out by 5:30. The concrete structure amplified every sound: footsteps, car doors, the hum of fluorescent lights that had seen better days. Zach Morton emerged from the elevator at 5:43. He was exactly what I'd expected: tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. The kind of man who'd never changed his own oil or fixed a leaky faucet. The kind who paid other people to handle life's messy details. He was checking his phone as he walked, probably texting my wife about their next rendezvous. I stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. Zach Morton? He looked up, startled. Yes? Do I know you? Nick Carter. I think we have some mutual interests. His face went through several expressions: confusion, recognition, then something approaching fear. Look, if this is it's about my wife and your creative partnership. I pulled out the SD card and held it up. Interesting footage, great audio quality too. You should hear yourself talking about starting your own agency. Very inspiring. The color drained from his face. Where did you get that? Dashcams are amazing technology. Most people forget they're recording. I stepped closer. But I'm sure you know all about technology, being in the creative business. Listen, Nick, can I call you Nick? This doesn't have to be complicated. Oh, but it is complicated. See, my wife thinks you're going to help her start a new life. But I'm wondering what your business partners think about you screwing clients' wives in parking garages. We're not. What? You're not what? Not planning to steal my wife? Not talking about divorce settlements while you're bent over my workbench? Zach's composure cracked. The smooth creative director disappeared, replaced by a middle-aged man who'd been caught with his pants down. What do you want? He asked. I want you to understand something. You think I'm some boring engineer who won't fight back. But here's the thing about structural engineering. We understand pressure points. We know exactly how much stress a system can take before it fails. I walked over to his Tesla and ran my hand along the pristine paint job. Beautiful car. Must have cost what? $80,000? 90? Don't. I pulled my keys from my pocket and dragged them along the driver's side door, carving cheater in letters 6 inches tall. The sound of metal on metal echoed through the garage like a scream. You son of a bitch. Zach lunged forward, but I'd expected it. 8 years of weekend basketball and construction work had kept me in better shape than his gym membership. I caught his wrist and twisted, not hard enough to break anything, but hard enough to make my point. Touch me and I'll send this video to every business contact in your phone. How do you think Morton Creative's reputation will handle a sex scandal? He jerked away, cradling his wrist. You're insane. No, I'm methodical. There's a difference. I walked back to my truck, leaving him standing next to his vandalized Tesla. As I drove away, I saw him in the rearview mirror, frantically examining the damage to his car. My phone rang before I'd made it out of the parking garage. Nick? Lena's voice was sharp with panic. Where are you? Driving home from work. Why? Someone sent me something at the office, a USB drive. What's on it? Silence. Then, we need to talk. I'll be home in 20 minutes. I'd actually prepared the USB that morning, a copy of the dashcam footage with a note, for the Don Draper in you, enjoy. I'd had it delivered to Morton Creative, knowing the receptionist would forward it to Lena. The trap was closing, and they were both inside it. When I got home, Lena was pacing the living room like a caged animal. Her laptop was open on the coffee table. The video paused on a frame that showed two figures in our garage. Explain this, she said. I sat down and studied the screen with professional detachment. Looks like security footage. Where did you say you got it? Don't play games with me, Nick. I know you know. Know what? About me and Zach. The admission hung in the air between us. After weeks of suspicion and investigation, hearing her say it out loud felt almost anticlimactic. How long? I asked. 3 months. Why? She stopped pacing and looked at me with something that might have been pity. Because you're not here, Nick. Even when you're sitting right next to me, you're somewhere else. Thinking about work, about your projects, about anything but us. So you decided to fuck someone else in our garage. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. It just did. And the plan to start your own agency? The divorce talk? Her shoulders sagged. You heard that? I heard everything. The question is, what happens now? Lena closed the laptop and sat down across from me. For a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married, vulnerable, uncertain, human. I don't know, she said. But I did. I'd been planning this conversation for days, running through scenarios like structural load calculations. Every possible outcome had been considered, every variable accounted for. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to call Zach and tell him the deal's off. No agency, no divorce, no more meetings in parking garages. And if I don't? I smiled, and something in my expression made her lean back. Then everyone in town gets to see your creative process, starting with your parents. The mention of her parents, conservative, religious, judgmental, hit home. Lena's face went white. You wouldn't. Try me. We stared at each other across the coffee table, 8 years of marriage reduced to a hostage negotiation. Outside, the October wind rattled the windows, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. I need time to think, Lena said finally. You have until tomorrow. She nodded and went upstairs. I heard the bedroom door close, then the muffled sound of a phone call, probably to Zach, explaining the new reality. I poured myself a drink and sat in my kitchen, feeling something that wasn't quite satisfaction but wasn't regret either. The foundation of my marriage was cracked beyond repair, but at least now I knew exactly where the damage was. Tomorrow, I'd start building something new. By Friday morning, the story had legs. Sierra Walsh, Lena's gossipy co-worker and social media addict, had apparently received her own copy of the USB drive. I'd made sure of it, along with a note suggesting she might want to protect the agency's reputation by keeping an eye on internal relationships. Sierra's interpretation of keeping an eye on involved posting cryptic Instagram stories about workplace drama and people who mix business with pleasure. Nothing explicit, but enough to get people talking. I learned this from Trish, who appeared at my fence Friday morning with Buster and a head full of rumors. The whole town's buzzing, she said, not bothering with pleasantries. Something about Lena and that marketing fellow. Sierra Walsh was at the coffee shop this morning, practically vibrating with gossip. Really? Oh, yes. Apparently there's some kind of scandal brewing at Morton Creative. Sierra kept checking her phone and muttering about damage control. Buster chose that moment to start barking at something in the bushes. Trish tugged his leash, but the dog had found another treasure, a hotel keycard half buried in the mulch. "Riverside Motel," Trish read, handing it over. "Goodness, Nick, you've got quite the collection of lost items in your yard." The keycard was dated 3 days ago, Zach and Lena's latest rendezvous, probably planned before I'd introduced myself in the parking garage. "Thanks, Trish." "Any time, dear. Oh, and Nick, whatever's happening with Lena, just remember, this town has a long memory. People don't forget when someone betrays their neighbors." She wandered off, leaving me with another piece of evidence and the growing realization that Millbrook's gossip network was more efficient than any surveillance system. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Meet me at the Riverside Motel, room 237, tonight at 8. Come alone. Z." I stared at the message, then at the key card in my hand. Zach was either very stupid or very desperate. Probably both. I spent the afternoon making preparations. A quick trip to Best Buy for a portable recording device. A stop at Mick's shop to borrow his truck, less conspicuous than my usual vehicle. A call to Sierra Walsh, using a voice I'd practiced until it sounded nothing like my own. "Sierra? This is David, from Channel 7 News. We've received a tip about a story involving Morton Creative. Would you be available for an interview tonight?" The eagerness in her voice was unmistakable. "What kind of story?" "The kind that might interest your social media followers. We'll be in the area around 8 o'clock. I'll be there." By 7:30, I was parked across from the Riverside Motel, watching room 237. Zach's Tesla was already there, parked behind the building like he was ashamed of it. The scratches on the door were still visible, even in the fading light. At 8 sharp, I knocked on the door. Zach opened it wearing jeans and a polo shirt, casual clothes that somehow made him look older, less polished. The room behind him was standard motel decor, beige walls, brown carpet, furniture that had seen better decades. "You came," he said. "You asked nicely." I stepped inside and closed the door. The room smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. "Look," Zach began, "this whole situation has gotten out of hand. Lena's talking about confessing everything to you, starting over, working on the marriage. How noble of her. The point is, we can all walk away from this. No more videos, no more vandalism, no more drama. Lena stays with you, I focus on my business, everybody wins." I sat down in the room's single chair and looked at him. "Except that's not what you want, is it?" "What I want doesn't matter anymore." "Sure it does. You want my wife. You want to start an agency together. You want to play house with someone else's spouse." I leaned forward. "The question is, what are you willing to do to get it?" Something shifted in Zach's expression. The desperate man who'd opened the door was replaced by someone harder, more calculating. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe Lena isn't the only one with secrets. Maybe I should ask your ex-wife why she really divorced you. Maybe I should look into Morton Creative's client relationships, see if there are any other patterns of behavior." Zach's face darkened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" "See, that's the thing about being methodical. You tend to find things people want to keep buried." I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot of a Google search. Morton Creative sexual harassment complaints. "There's nothing there," he said. But his voice lacked conviction. "Not yet. But if I keep digging, if I start making calls, talking to former employees, former clients, well, you never know what might surface." The room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning unit. Outside, I could hear cars passing on the main road, people going about their normal Friday evening routines. "What do you want?" Zach asked finally. "I want you to understand that this isn't just about my marriage anymore. This is about consequences. You thought you could take what you wanted without paying the price, but every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Basic physics." I stood up and walked to the window. Across the parking lot, I could see Sierra Walsh getting out of her car, phone already in hand, probably live streaming her arrival at what she thought was a news interview. "In about 2 minutes," I said. "Sierra's going to knock on this door looking for a Channel 7 news crew that doesn't exist. She's going to find you instead, in a motel room, looking guilty as hell. And she's going to broadcast it to everyone she knows." Zach spun around. "You set me up. I engineered a solution to a structural problem." The knock came right on schedule. Sierra's voice carried through the thin door. "Hello? David? It's Sierra Walsh." Zach looked at me with something approaching panic. "Don't answer it." "I don't have to. She's got a key." I held up the key card Buster had found in my yard. Funny thing about motel security, they never change the locks. The door opened, and Sierra walked in with her phone held high, already recording. Her expression went from confusion to delight as she realized what she'd stumbled into. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Zach, what are you doing here?" "Sierra, this isn't what it looks like. It looks like you're in a motel room having a secret meeting." She panned the phone around the room, capturing the unmade bed, the empty wine bottle on the nightstand, the general seediness of the location. "Where's Lena?" "She's not. This isn't about—" But Sierra wasn't listening. She was already posting, her fingers flying over her phone screen. Within minutes, the video would be on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and whatever other platforms she used to document her life. "This is amazing," she breathed. "Wait until everyone sees this." I slipped out while she was distracted, leaving Zach to explain himself to Millbrook's most prolific gossip. By the time I reached Mick's truck, my phone was already buzzing with notifications. Sierra had tagged the motel's location, used hashtags like #Millbrook drama and #caught in the act, and added a caption that read, "When you think you're meeting a news crew, but find your boss's secret boyfriend instead." The video already had 50 views and climbing. I drove home through the quiet streets of Millbrook, past houses where families were settling in for the weekend, unaware that their town's latest scandal was unfolding in real time on social media. By tomorrow, everyone would know about Zach Morton's motel meeting. By Monday, the speculation would be reaching fever pitch. Lena was waiting in the kitchen when I got home, her laptop open to Sierra's Instagram feed. "You did this," she said. "I didn't make Zach go to that motel. You set him up. I gave him a choice. He made it." She closed the laptop and looked at me with something I'd never seen before, fear mixed with a grudging respect. "What happens now?" "Now we see how much pressure the system can take before it collapses completely." Outside, the October wind was picking up, rattling the windows and scattering leaves across our yard. Storm weather was coming, and I intended to be ready for it. Saturday morning brought the kind of autumn storm that strips trees bare and sends people scurrying for cover. It also brought Lena's parents to our front door. Richard and Margaret Evans were the kind of people who ironed their jeans and considered dancing a sin. They'd never approved of me, too blue-collar, too Catholic, too likely to corrupt their precious daughter with working-class values. But they approved of Lena's recent behavior even less. "Nicholas," Richard said when I opened the door. He was the only person who used my full name, usually as a weapon. "We need to speak with our daughter. She's upstairs. Come in." They entered like they were walking into a crime scene, Margaret clutching her purse like a shield. I could hear Lena's footsteps on the stairs, slow and reluctant. "Mom? Dad? What are you doing here?" Richard held up his phone, displaying Sierra's Instagram post. The video had been viewed over 3,000 times now, with comments ranging from shocked emojis to detailed speculation about the affair. "Explain this," he said. Lena looked at the phone, then at me, then back at her parents. "It's complicated." "Adultery usually is," Margaret said coldly. The word hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. I'd been thinking it for weeks, but hearing someone else say it out loud made it real in a way that evidence and confrontations hadn't. "We raised you better than this," Richard continued. We taught you about commitment, about honor, about the sanctity of marriage. You taught me about appearances, Lena shot back, about keeping up the right image, maintaining the right reputation. Well, congratulations, I've destroyed both. Don't be flippant. This isn't just about you anymore. Your behavior reflects on our entire family. I watched the argument unfold from the kitchen doorway, feeling like a spectator at my own life's demolition. 3 generations of family dysfunction playing out in my living room while the storm raged outside. What do you want me to do? Lena asked. The whole town knows. Sierra's made sure of that. You fix it, Margaret said. You end this relationship. And you work on your marriage. You go to counseling, you ask for forgiveness, and you rebuild what you've torn down. And if I don't want to? The silence that followed was deafening. Richard and Margaret exchanged a look that communicated 30 years of shared disappointment. Then you're no daughter of ours, Richard said finally. Lena's composure cracked. Dad, we're ashamed of you, Lena. Deeply, profoundly ashamed. And until you make this right, we have nothing more to say to each other. They left without another word, walking out into the storm like they were fleeing a plague house. Through the window, I watched them drive away in their spotless sedan, windshield wipers fighting the rain. Lena stood in the living room, staring at the closed door. I'm sorry you had to see that, she said. Are you? Sorry, I mean. She turned to look at me, and for the first time in months, I saw something genuine in her expression. Not the polished creative director or the guilty wife, but the woman I'd married 8 years ago. I'm sorry I hurt you, she said. I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry I made choices that affected more than just me. But you're not sorry you did it. No, I'm not. The honesty was brutal and refreshing at the same time. No more lies, no more pretense, just the truth laid bare like exposed wiring. So what now? I asked. Now I have to decide if I want to spend the rest of my life trying to fix something that was already broken, or if I want to start over and accept the consequences. My phone buzzed with a text from Mick. Turn on Channel 7. Now. I grabbed the remote and switched to the local news. The weekend anchor, a earnest young woman with perfectly styled hair, was reading from a teleprompter. Local marketing executive Zach Morton has been placed on administrative leave following allegations of inappropriate workplace conduct. The action comes after a video surfaced on social media showing Morton in what appears to be a compromising situation. The story continued for another minute, detailing Morton Creative's internal investigation and quoting anonymous sources about a pattern of unprofessional behavior. No mention of Lena by name, but anyone who'd seen Sierra's video could connect the dots. Jesus, Lena whispered. They fired him. Administrative leave isn't fired. It's suspended pending investigation. It's the same thing. His reputation is destroyed. I thought about Zach's confident voice on the dashcam recording, dismissing me as not the confrontational type. I thought about his casual assumption that he could take what he wanted without consequences. Good, I said. Lena stared at me. Good? Nick, his career is over. His life is ruined. His life is complicated. There's a difference. When did you become so cold? When I found a condom wrapper in our garage. The storm outside was intensifying, rain lashing against the windows with increasing violence. The power flickered once, twice, then held steady. I'm going to pack some things, Lena said. Stay at my sister's for a while. Give us both time to think. Okay. That's it? Just okay? I looked at her, really looked at her, for what felt like the first time in years. She was still beautiful, still the woman who'd made me laugh at a college party 20 years ago. But she was also a stranger, someone who'd made choices I couldn't understand or forgive. What else do you want me to say? I don't know. Fight for me? Ask me to stay? Something other than okay? Would it matter if I did? She considered the question for a long moment. No, probably not. Then okay is all I've got. She went upstairs to pack, and I sat in my kitchen listening to the storm. The house felt different already. Emptier, but also cleaner somehow. Like an infected wound that had finally been drained. An hour later, Lena came downstairs with a suitcase and her laptop bag. She paused at the front door, looking back at the life she was leaving behind. For what it's worth, she said, I never meant for it to happen this way. I know. And Nick? You were wrong about one thing. You are the confrontational type. You just needed the right motivation. She left, driving away into the storm with the same determination she'd brought to everything else in her life. I watched her taillights disappear around the corner, then closed the door and went back to my kitchen. My phone was full of messages, friends, co-workers, neighbors, all wanting to know what was happening, offering support or seeking gossip. I turned it off and poured myself a drink. Outside, the storm was reaching its peak, wind howling through the trees like something wild and angry. But inside my house, for the first time in months, everything was quiet. I raised my glass to the empty kitchen and spoke to no one in particular. Here's to structural integrity. Then I drank and waited for the storm to pass. The Rusty Nail was packed for a Tuesday night, which meant something significant was happening in Millbrook. I'd avoided the place for a week, giving the gossip mill time to process the weekend's events. But isolation had its limits, and I needed to know how the story was playing in the court of public opinion. Bev spotted me the moment I walked in. "Nick Carter! Get over here, you magnificent bastard!" The entire bar turned to look at me, not with the pity I'd expected, but with something approaching admiration. Conversations paused, drinks were raised in silent salute, and someone actually started clapping. "What's all this?" I asked, sliding onto my usual bar stool. "You kidding me?" "You're the hero of the hour." Bev poured my whiskey without being asked. "Half the men in town want to buy you a drink. The other half want lessons." Lessons in what? How to handle a cheating spouse without ending up in jail or divorce court. I looked around the bar, taking in the faces of my neighbors. These were people I'd known for years, some since childhood, but I was seeing them differently now. Or maybe they were seeing me differently. So, what's the official verdict? Lena's persona non grata. Her parents aren't speaking to her, Morton Creative won't return her calls, and word is she's staying with her sister in Springfield indefinitely. Bev leaned closer. As for Zach Morton, well, let's just say his administrative leave became permanent yesterday. Fired, divorced, again, and facing a sexual harassment lawsuit from 2 former employees who suddenly found their voices after Sierra's video went viral. Bev's smile was sharp as broken glass. Funny how courage is contagious. I sipped my whiskey, processing the information. The domino effect had exceeded even my calculations. What started as personal revenge had become something larger, a reckoning for behavior that had apparently been tolerated for too long. "Nick?" A woman's voice behind me, hesitant but familiar. I turned to find Jenna Walsh, Sierra's older sister, and a paralegal at the law firm downtown. We'd gone to high school together but hadn't spoken in years. "Jenna, how are you?" "Good." "Listen, I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For what you did to Morton. I worked there 3 years ago before I went back to school for my paralegal certificate. Well, let's just say he made my life difficult when I wouldn't play along with his idea of workplace mentoring." The bar had gone quiet around us, people pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. "I never reported it," Jenna continued. "I was young, needed the job, figured it was just the way things were. But seeing him get exposed like that, seeing there were consequences, it made me realize I wasn't the only one. That's why you're part of the lawsuit? That's why I'm leading it." She squeezed my shoulder and walked back to her table, leaving me to contemplate the unintended consequences of my revenge. I'd set out to humiliate an adulterer and accidentally exposed a predator. Feeling proud of yourself? A new voice, male and hostile. I turned to find Jude Brennan, Zach's friend and occasional drinking buddy. He was swaying slightly, clearly several beers past his limit. "Should I be?" I asked. "You destroyed a good man's life over a personal grudge." The bar's attention focused on us like a spotlight. Bev's hand moved toward the baseball bat she kept behind the register. "Jude," she warned, "maybe you should head home. Maybe Nick should explain why he thinks he's judge and jury for the whole damn town." I stood up slowly, keeping my hands visible and my voice calm. "I think you've got me confused with someone else. I didn't destroy anything. I just made sure the truth came to light. Your truth. Your version of events. The video doesn't lie. The motel receipts don't lie. The harassment complaints don't lie. Those complaints are bullshit. Opportunistic women looking for a payday. The bar erupted. 3 different people started shouting at once. Chairs scraped against the floor, and Bev's baseball bat appeared above the bar like an exclamation point. "Enough!" she roared. "Jude, you're cut off and you're leaving. Now." "This isn't over," Jude said, pointing at me with an unsteady finger. "Yeah, it is." The voice came from the doorway. Mick stood there in his work clothes, flanked by 2 other guys from the auto shop. They weren't threatening exactly, but their presence made a clear statement about which side of this conflict had more support. Jude looked around the bar, reading the room's mood. Whatever he saw there convinced him to leave quietly, muttering under his breath about justice and fairness. "Drama follows you around these days," Mick said, sliding onto the vacated bar stool. "Apparently. You okay with all this? The attention, the hero worship, the enemies?" I considered the question while Bev refilled my glass. A month ago, I'd been an anonymous engineer with a failing marriage and no enemies worth mentioning. Now I was the center of Millbrook's biggest scandal in years, with people either celebrating or condemning my actions. "I'm okay with the truth being out there," I said finally. "Even if it gets messy, especially if it gets messy. Clean lies are more dangerous than messy truths." Mick nodded and ordered his beer. Around us, the bar's normal rhythm resumed, conversations about work and weather and weekend plans. But I could feel the undercurrent of change, the sense that something fundamental had shifted in the town's social structure. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Saw the news about your wife. If you need someone to talk to, call me." "Jenna." I stared at the message, surprised by the gesture. In the past week, I'd received dozens of similar offers. Neighbors inviting me to dinner, co-workers suggesting drinks, even my elderly landlady from college reaching out after seeing the story on Facebook. It seemed that publicly standing up to betrayal had earned me a kind of social capital I'd never possessed before. People respected the way I'd handled the situation, methodically, effectively, without violence or self-pity. "You're thinking too hard," Mick observed. "Just processing. Process this. You won. Lena's gone, Morton's finished, and you came out looking like the wronged party who fought back smart instead of fighting back stupid. And now what? Now you figure out what comes next. New chapter, clean slate, all that self-help book bullshit." I finished my drink and left money on the bar. "Thanks, Bev, for everything. Anytime, hun, and Nick, don't be a stranger. This place could use more heroes and fewer victims." I walked out into the October night, breathing air that felt cleaner somehow. The storm from the weekend had passed, leaving behind clear skies and the sharp scent of autumn. My house waited at the end of the street, empty but no longer lonely. For the first time in months, I was looking forward to going home. Epilogue, the new foundation. 3 months later, I was sitting in my kitchen on a Saturday morning when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see a moving truck parked across the street and a woman directing the movers with the efficiency of a general commanding troops. I opened the door to find Jenna Walsh holding a plate of cookies and wearing paint-stained jeans. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said. "You bought the Morrison place?" "Closed yesterday. Figured it was time to stop renting and put down some roots." The Morrison house had been empty since Trish moved to Florida after Christmas. It was a good house, solid foundation, well-maintained, the kind of place that would appreciate in value over time. "Congratulations. Coffee?" "I'd love some." We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Lena had planned her escape and I'd plotted my revenge. But the atmosphere was different now, lighter, less charged with hidden tensions. "How's the lawsuit going?" I asked. "Settlement negotiations. Morton's lawyers want to avoid trial, and honestly, so do we. The publicity has already served its purpose." "Which was?" "Making sure other women know they don't have to accept that kind of behavior. The settlement money is nice, but the real victory was watching him lose everything he thought made him untouchable." Through the window, I could see the movers carrying boxes labeled kitchen and books and Jenna's art stuff. The mundane details of a life in transition. "What about you?" she asked. "Any word from Lena?" "Divorce papers came through last week. She's staying in Springfield, working for some boutique agency. Apparently, she's seeing a therapist and working on herself." "How do you feel about that?" "Relieved, mostly. We were broken long before Zach Morton came along. He was just the symptom, not the disease." Jenna nodded, understanding the distinction. She'd been through her own divorce 2 years earlier, an amicable split from a husband who decided he preferred his secretary to his wife. "Any regrets?" she asked. I thought about the question seriously. 3 months had given me perspective on the events that had reshaped my life. The anger had faded, replaced by something more complex. Not satisfaction exactly, but a sense of completion. "I regret that it took so long for me to stand up for myself," I said finally. "I regret that other people got hurt in the process. But I don't regret fighting back." "Good. You shouldn't." We finished our coffee in comfortable silence, two people who'd learned that sometimes the only way to build something new was to tear down what came before. Outside, the movers were carrying in a couch, navigating the narrow doorway with practiced skill. "I should let you get back to supervising," I said. "Actually, I was wondering if you might want to help. I've got pizza money and beer, and I could use someone who knows about structural integrity." I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since high school. She was pretty in an understated way, with laugh lines around her eyes and the kind of confidence that came from surviving life's harder lessons. "I'd like that," I said. We spent the afternoon moving boxes and arranging furniture, falling into an easy rhythm of cooperation. Jenna had good instincts about space and flow, understanding how rooms should work together. When she asked my opinion about where to put her bookshelf, I found myself thinking about load-bearing walls and sight lines, applying my professional knowledge to domestic problems. "You're good at this," she said, as we positioned her dining table near the window. "It's just engineering, understanding how things fit together." I meant helping, being present, paying attention to what someone else needs. The comment hit deeper than I'd expected. Lena had accused me of being absent even when I was physically there, lost in my own thoughts and projects. But here, in Jenna's half-furnished living room, I felt completely engaged. "I'm learning," I said. As the sun set, we sat on her front porch with beers, surveying the day's progress. Boxes were stacked in logical order, furniture was positioned for maximum functionality, and the house already felt like a home. "Thank you," Jenna said, "for today and for what you did 3 months ago. You changed things in this town, whether you meant to or not. I just wanted my life back. You got it, and you helped other people get theirs back too." Across the street, my own house sat quiet in the gathering darkness. It looked smaller from this angle, less imposing. Still solid, still well-built, but no longer the fortress I'd retreated to after my marriage collapsed. "I should head home," I said, standing up from the porch steps. "Nick?" Jenna's voice stopped me at the bottom of the walkway. "Would you like to have dinner sometime?" Nothing dramatic, just two neighbors getting to know each other. I looked back at her, silhouetted in the porch light, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years, genuine interest in another person's company. I'd like that very much. "Good. I'll call you." I walked across the street to my house, keys jingling in my pocket, feeling lighter than I had in months. The foundation of my old life had cracked beyond repair, but the ground beneath it was still solid. Strong enough to build something new. Inside, I poured myself a drink and sat in my kitchen, looking out at the house across the street where lights were coming on in windows, where a woman was making herself at home in a place that had been empty too long. My phone buzzed with a text from Mick. "Heard you helped Jenna move in. Town's already talking." I typed back, "Let them talk. I'm done hiding." "Good for you. Drinks tomorrow?" "Sure, but not at the Rusty Nail. Somewhere new." "Now you're thinking like a free man." I set the phone aside and raised my glass to the empty kitchen. The same toast I'd made 3 months ago, but with an entirely different meaning. "Here's to structural integrity," I said. But this time I wasn't talking about my marriage. I was talking about myself.